Hello and welcome to Insights with me, Lynne O'Donnell. I'm talking to Zahra Joya, who is the founder and editor-in-chief of Rukhshana Media, an independent Afghan news outlet that she now runs in exile. It does solid investigative work on issues specific to women, and since the Taliban's return to power has uncovered some of the horrors of life in Afghanistan. We discuss the difficulty in maintaining international interest in Afghanistan generally, and women in particular, and the way that media organisations and journalists have become mouthpieces for the extremists. Tolo News, for instance, was once famous for the quality of its journalism, but it's now known as Talib News. Have a listen. Zahra, thanks so much for joining us today. You're the founder and editor-in-chief of Rukhshana Media. Can you explain your path and your mission?
Thank you, Lynne. It's an honor for me to speak with you. So I worked as a female journalist in Afghanistan starting in 2011, contributing with different media outlets in Afghanistan. To be honest, opportunity for women like me and the media industry in Afghanistan was very limited. So largely because of the male dominations in different and various aspects in Afghanistan. So while there were some initiatives claiming to supporting Afghan women, but most of them were controlled by men. So this is just a background. I just want to tell a little bit background. I really don't want to see gender segregation like the kind of the Taliban are doing right now or for enforcing right now in Afghanistan society. But I also cannot remain silent when see lots of discrimination. So back to your question. I have started Rukhshana Media in November 2020, before the Taliban took power, after more than 1 decade work in the Afghan media industry, because I saw there was urgent need to give Afghan women a platform to their stories, to tell their stories, to share their perspective. So for many years, unfortunately, in Afghanistan, women have faced systematic discriminations and violence. So, but their voices should be heard in some part, of course. And most of the time, the women of Afghanistan voices will remain silenced or marginalized. So that's why I created Rukhshana Media with a slogan to women for women. At the moment, I think it's more crucial, our work in Rukhshana Media, because of this so much separation and gender segregation and that's going on in Afghanistan under Taliban rule.
Yeah, indeed. It's very easy to forget, I think, given how awful things are now, that it wasn't easy for women during the Republic. In fact, Afghanistan was consistently named by NGOs that monitor these things as the worst place in the world to be born female, long before the return of the Taliban.
Absolutely. So in our mission in Rukhshana Media is to create a platform for women of Afghanistan, give them a chance to speak for themselves. There are some frustrating comments is coming out about Afghanistan, and everybody says, oh, the in terms of Afghan women education, in terms of women participation in the society in public, it's a better reality for Afghanistan. Excuse me, how long it this better reality going on?
Mm.
20 years ago, there was a better reality for Afghanistan women. They deprived from their very fundamental and basic rights, from the education to work to participation in the society. But after 20 years, again, after 2 decades, we are going down that kind of circle. So
Mm.
at some point, I think it's very crucial for us to speak up about this kind of problem for ourselves, whatever it's, no matter in terms of for political, for the rest of the world. But what we are doing, I think, giving a voice to the women of Afghanistan to create a conversation among them.
Well, how difficult has it been, Zahra, especially since August 2021, to maintain an interest in the work that you do, to get funding, to establish partnerships so that, the very good, high quality investigative work that you do is published for a wide international audience?
Since the Taliban took power in August 2021, our work has become much more difficult, honestly, because the Taliban have imposed so much restrictions and
Mm.
limitations on the media activities. And also today, being an independent journalist and under the Taliban rule is completely a crime, right?
Mm. Mm.
So I know, for us, a few of my colleagues, they fled from Afghanistan. Some of those who are still in the country, they're taking their life on their
Mm.
hands to get
Yeah.
information.
Yeah.
And absolutely about the women that they are suffering, especially female journalists. It's somehow, we cannot explain the very better way that how it's difficult for women to be a journalist in the country like Afghanistan.
Indeed. Well, you recently went to a quite high profile conference in the capital of Albania for Afghan women. It was organised specifically to bring Afghan women together. How did you find that? Is there a cohesion among women's groups that can be built into a movement to maintain some level of momentum for awareness outside the country, outside your groups?
Um, I think that conference in Albania last month, it was a historical moment for women of Afghanistan, especially after 3 years, when the Taliban removed and forbidden women from public society completely. As you know, recently the Taliban the Taliban issued another decree, which is called Vice and Virtue Law. So exactly in this moment, it was a very important and platform being for women in together in somewhere in this country, like a country like Albania. Although it was not a easy task. It was a very difficult and challenging uh, um, challenging organized for women to come through all different countries from
Mm.
diaspora, and
Mm.
even a few of them came from inside the country, and brought so much strong messages. But I think that conference, I believe that we should continue this kind of conversation among Afghans in diaspora, especially among Afghan women. because we really need it, when in a time that the rest of the world have forgotten us. And so this is our time to speak up for ourselves. And so that conference, I think there was a strong sense of unity about in the meantime, was gathering about 130 women in one place, and many of women, they built solidarity with each other, and also they created a strong collective voice to advocate for those we left behind.
Yes, indeed. But there doesn't seem to be a recognition globally that what happens to women in Afghanistan can happen to women anywhere. I mean, at a time when women's rights are under assault worldwide, and there's never, I'm a Western woman. I would be considered successful in my chosen career of journalism, but I've never been paid the same as the men in my profession doing the same jobs, and I've never been given the same access as men to promotion and likewise. But women in America at the moment are fighting for physical and reproductive autonomy. It's an election issue, for goodness sake. So where are the high-profile women's voices speaking up for women in Afghanistan and making it clear that women are women no matter where they are? And if you allow the extreme to become normalized, then everybody's rights at every level are under threat. Where are they? And do you find this frustrating?
I think absolutely it's very frustrating to see how the global feminist movements often overlook Afghanistan. So what is happening in Afghanistan is not an isolated event, I think. It is a part of a brighter assault on women, or women rights that they see this in around the world, we can see. So it is a part of, and also few, as you mentioned, few high-profile women's voice are continuously advocating for women of Afghanistan. So I think specifically in terms of fighting with fundamentalists, with terrorists, with with the extremists. I think we need more solidarity. We need we need more support from the global feminist movement, because fighting for women rights, I think, whatever in the US, in the UK, or in Afghanistan, is I think is interconnected. So we really need to be in one pathway and stand alongside of each other, and giving hands to each other, and speak up on behalf of each other. So I think this is the moment that we should protect our right, our real right.
But have you thought about how you can make that happen? How can you make, Western, for instance, Western feminist movements recognise that what's happening into Afghanistan, to women in Afghanistan, is also part of their agenda?
So, as I mentioned, I think one of the way that we can build a better or a stronger unity is to be in connection, to have the communication, better communication. I think the people, the journalists like yourself, you are playing a crucial role in terms of spreading the awareness and giving the voice to those who are voiceless at the moment. and also using the international media platforms. It's very important, and I think there are some different other ways that the feminist movements and the women who are high profile in different countries. I think this is a very good time to be again stand to each other. Like we can remind ourselves the movement that they remarked, the movement of a group of women that they remarked 8th of March years and years ago. So unfortunately, and then the some part of the world is so male domination and patriarchy societies. That's why the women are suffering so much.
Well, I kind of think that the whole world is a patriarchal society. I had thought that sport, which is only in recent years has competitive sport been opened up to women on a professional level, like football, like cricket, for instance. And I thought that maybe sport would be a way to appeal to those, middle class, middle-aged white men who run the world, and say, let's push the Taliban cricket team out of international competition, for instance, the way Australia has, until the ethos of the sport that is espoused by organisations like the International Cricket Council and the England and Wales Cricket Board and the Indians who dominate the sport now, until they follow the ethos and make their sport equal to men and women. Don't let Afghanistan play. I mean, small things like that would have a big impact, I think, on raising awareness amongst the men who control and run sport and very many other things, including journalism. Any thoughts?
Absolutely. I think so at the moment, there is a fight for those who believes in democracy and freedom and liberty, and there are groups of fundamentalists. So absolutely, I think there's some point that we can work at least to have analyze about the consequence of giving that much time to the fundamentalist groups, that they are clearly violented the human rights, our values, and they are breaking the international law. So yes, I mean, you mentioned about the cricket team. There is a international law and there is a specific policy about who and which group can play in this industry, in this playground. Uh, but a group of cricket board team in Afghanistan, unfortunately, they are very engaged with the Taliban, which is completely from the Taliban point of view. Cricket, football, and the other fun things that the human being are using, that it's not acceptable. So for us, it's a question: what was the reasons that there was a much more connection between Afghan cricket team with the Taliban, and there is nothing, there is no connection with us, that we were big fun of them, we support them, we were enjoyed from their victory before the Taliban.
Yeah, indeed. Well, with so much going on in the world, I guess there's a fatigue perhaps with what's happening in Afghanistan. Does this lack of concern also extend to your organisation? I mean, Rukhshana is unique, yet I think you struggle for funding that other organisations do not. And I'm thinking of wealth-funded television stations run by well-known men. How does this fatigue, if that's what we want to call it, impact you and Rukhshana directly?
Yes, there is definitely a fatigue, especially in the media industry. We do face significant challenges in securing funding. Unfortunately, and Rukhshana Media operating as on a small budget compared to the larger male-led media organizations. So our focus on Afghan women's issues, particularly in a country like Afghanistan, it doesn't attract the same level of funding or attention. So this reflects a broader, a bigger problem, where women's stories and voices are undervalued, undervalued, and especially in the media industry. And there is very much attention, very less, and a small attention in terms of giving funds to the media like Rukhshana Media, like the other media, that they are focusing in a very important issues, but it seems like very unimportant issue to the others. So yeah, it's a headache for us, and it's a frustrating time. So, but although we are challenging so much, but we are commitment on our mission, and of course we are seeking for support for, that, and with the hope that hopefully one day some of the organizations can realize and acknowledge the importance of our work, in Rukhshana Media or the other media outlets that they are operating independently.
Yes, and it seems that the discrimination that you experienced in Afghanistan is extended to your existence in exile as well. It's quite ironic. You speak, Zahra, to people in Afghanistan all the time. As things get worse and the country goes darker and it's more difficult to know just what's happening, and the appeasement of the Taliban deepens, how do you see the situation there developing?
Sadly, the situation is becoming more dire by day by day, and the Taliban's restrictions and repression on women, especially, has been deeper. And there are sense of a despair among Afghans, many Afghans, especially women. So unfortunately, it's without any significant pressure from the international community. Taliban are happy to rolling Afghanistan, or to run Afghanistan in a very wrong way, that it's very harmful for the rest of the population in Afghanistan, for the future of Afghanistan, for the next generation. So at the moment, you might have heard about the increasing establishing the madrasas in across Afghanistan. So imagine 10 years later, all the Afghan communities, including, as you know, Afghanistan is very diverse. There are different communities, Hazara communities, that they are more liberal. So we are afraid that 10 years later, we have all one Talib in our house. So this is very something worrying and a big concern for all of us, especially for somebody like me that I am contacting deeply with people in Afghanistan, and I am speaking daily with people from different part of the country, from different communities. So that's why, I mean, sadly, we cannot compare the situation when the Taliban first took power and later, 3 years later. It's really, really,
Indeed.
really hard to say how much is the Afghan society affected by the Taliban policy and ideology.
And it's become so much worse in those 3 years. It's difficult to imagine how much worse it can become, but it will, because that's the nature of the beast, isn't it? Recently, the high-profile media owner Saad Mohseni, who established Tolo and Mobi, he told the American radio network, National Public Radio, NPR, that nothing has changed in Afghanistan since the Taliban's return to power, even in the face of enormous evidence to the contrary. I mean, what do you think? What's going on there? What's his motivation? Why would he say that?
Honestly, a few people like the man that you named, you mentioned, there are a few people that they are very optimistic, in terms of lobbying to the Taliban, giving positive sense from the very bad situation, honestly. So the reality is that so much has been changed since the Taliban took power in Afghanistan. A very a clear issue is about Afghan women. Half of the population of Afghanistan are women. Imagine the Taliban cut off the half population connection to the world, to the public sphere. So I really don't understand why they are rising such of things that is not true. We, at least some of people that they are very involved about in Afghanistan issues, so they have so much evidence. I don't know how they ignoring the kind of evidence that we have uh, on front of our eyes, and seeing that how the situation is in Afghanistan is difficult and has been changed under the Taliban role in a very harmful way. But the people, like, I really don't understand why they are saying something like there has been nothing changed. I was surprised, honestly, when I have heard that in interview.
This is a person who owns media, and media are journalists are incredibly pressured by the Taliban, with, as you and I have discussed in the past, the way the Ministry of Information seeks to control what is broadcast, what is printed. Can you describe the way what passes now for news is created in Afghanistan? You're talking also not just to people all over the world for your reporting, but you talk to journalists as well, don't you?
Absolutely. Unfortunately, when the Taliban took power, hundreds and experienced journalists left Afghanistan. So many other media outlets have been closed because of the lack of lack of support, of financial support, lack of uh, space for their activities in the country. So recently, the Taliban is so, I mean, oh my God, it's so difficult to explain that the Taliban, how they are using media and social media as a tool to spread their propaganda, you know, spread their ideology among people. Unfortunately, the media outlets is a very, it was a very famous in Afghanistan before the Taliban took power, through news. Right now, the people called Talib news, right? Because it's completely under Taliban control. They are not allowed to publish stories and news beyond the Taliban policy, and every single news information comes out through that kind of media outlets who are operating, which and that were operating from inside Afghanistan. It's completely controlled by Taliban. That's completely under Taliban review, and under the Taliban review, and also there is nothing for the people to hear independent and independent and accurate news. So something like the people lost the rights to freedom of expression. The Taliban the Taliban have a list that how the media can, who is able to interview with the media, specifically the Taliban spokesperson, specifically the Taliban supporters, and also the most of the journalists that they are working, they should obey the Taliban role. They cannot attend to the mostly women. The female journalists cannot attend to the press conference, and the male journalists, they cannot interview a woman. And also they the journalists cannot cover the women protests inside the country. So there's, I mean, the list going on and on, like it's a very long list that the Taliban putting restrictions on the media and the independent and the journalist activities.
And what are the consequences, Zahra, of not going along with the restrictions that the Taliban have imposed?
It's jail. If you, as a journalist, don't obey the Taliban rule, you will get jail, you will get torture, and you will be arrested by the Taliban intelligence service. And obviously, I mean, recently, two of the male journalists in Afghanistan, they got 10 years jail. And during this 3 years, I think more than 300 journalists and activists, media activists, and media employees were arrested by the Taliban and imprisoned. So a few of them released. Some of them are still remain in the jail. Some of them got in a longer jail and present in the Taliban, unfortunately, in the Taliban role. So, I mean, honestly, the consequences are very dangerous for those who want to, break the Taliban rule.
Who want to be journalists and practice journalism.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There is no space to practice independent journalism.
Yeah, I think it's worth saying that Afghanistan was really one of the few places in that part of the world where journalism was free, was practiced freely. You have Pakistan, China, the Central Asian states, Iran. In the middle there was Afghanistan, which was really a very bright light for freedom of speech and freedom of the media. Thanks to the largesse of the US government, which put in, I think, something like $1 billion over the course of 5 years to develop a very dynamic and feisty media sector. And it's really just been closed down so quickly because people's lives are at risk if they continue to practice their craft. It's been very sad, very swift, very sudden. And I wonder if it will be reversible.
I think yes, media improvement in Afghanistan was one of a big achievement for the Afghan province government and also for the international community. And it was a value,
Yeah.
honestly, it's a common value among Afghan people.
Mm.
But unfortunately, yes, it's true. It is very dramatically fall by the Taliban, and we lost this important achievement that we had, and I think the media played a very important role in terms of practicing the democracy values in Afghanistan, practicing the other norms of modern world. But
Yeah,
unfortunately, yes, that's very true.
it's all gone backwards very quickly. Well, how much worse do you think things can get? And the world is appeasing the Taliban when they say, for instance, Doha 3, we're not coming along if women are represented, if civil society is represented, and the United Nations says okay, and the Taliban get their way. They seem to get their way with every step. And I wonder if you can imagine things getting worse before they get better.
I think it is important to be highlight from some of those that they are in makers possession. So appeasing to the Taliban, it's by international community has a very um, difficult and hard consequence of for the international community and for the rest of the world. I mean, as I mentioned before, right now the people are suffering in Afghanistan with the radical, and like the Taliban are doing radicalizations, and they are promoting fundamentalism in Afghanistan. They are supporting extremist activities in the country, and basically we gonna see. I think it's much better for us to understand the problem of Afghanistan beyond the women education, beyond the women uh, restrictions that they are facing today. So, I mean, you know, looking back to the Taliban background, where they got education, where they, got training from to being in the and making a very core ideology for themselves. It's very worrying and concerning for us, honestly. As I mentioned before, I cannot imagine that 10 years later we all across Afghanistan we have one Talib in our house, in our
Yeah,
home,
indeed.
and it is a big danger for not only for Afghanistan, for the rest of the region, for the rest of the world. And in terms of why, Taliban are, honestly, engagement with the Taliban is a big victory for fundamentalists, for the terrorist groups, and this consequence of recognition and engagement with the Taliban is remains silent at the moment. So we have to highlight about this kind of issues as well.
Do you think that an opposition can be built either outside the country or inside Afghanistan that can challenge the Taliban without a return to war, given that their platform is ideological and therefore immovable, and things are only getting worse as their agenda deepens? What's your view on how they can and how effectively they can be opposed?
I think we have no option if we don't want to make a opposition for the Taliban. So the problem at the moment is that the people of Afghanistan are so ununited. Unfortunately, there is not a unity or a solidarity, a strong solidarity among them, which is very disappointed. But I think there are some ways that by the help of international community, by support of the Afghanistan allies, we can definitely make an opposition for the Taliban. So at the moment there is something missing between Afghans, especially when they cannot rely on each other. There is we definitely need to or build trust, do some trust building among the Afghans. So, but in terms of as long as the Taliban be in power in Afghanistan, giving them chance to rule Afghanistan, it is harmful for all of us. So I think this is important that we do focus on different parts of how, first of all, we should think how we're gonna make more pressure on the Taliban, how much we can observe the situation of Afghanistan closely, and also how we at the end, I know, like at the second part of our efforts, how we gonna make the Taliban I don't know how we can maybe make the Taliban remove from the power, because at the moment they are in power and they controlling, they running Afghanistan, the whole Afghanistan, with gun, with weapon. So, and somehow we should take off that kind of weapons that they have, and rolling Afghanistan in that way.
Well, it means that organisations like yours, the media operating freely in exile, becomes that much more important.
Absolutely. I think, at the moment, yes, Taliban, they are an armed group. But in another hand, there is unfortunately ideological war going on in Afghanistan. So media, journalists, and the civil society, they all have a very important role in terms of spreading information to the people, give them chance to speak about their problem, and asking them to be aware about what is going on around them, and what some people like Taliban are dealing with their life, with their values. So I believe we are entered into another war, which is absolutely ideological war, unfortunately.
Indeed. Well, more power to you and to Rukhshana, and congratulations on the work that you do. And I hope that you can achieve greater support so that you can continue to work in the way that you have been. Thank you so much for your time, Zahra. I really appreciate you coming on and speaking to me today.
Thank you, Lynne. Thank you. It's my pleasure.
That was Zahra Joya, journalist and media entrepreneur. We talked about the strangulation of free speech and free media in Afghanistan, once the sole shining light in a region of autocracy, and the important role that Afghanistan's exile media is now playing in ensuring that the light, though dim, remains on. I hope you enjoyed our discussion. That's all for now. I'm Lynne O'Donnell. Bye-bye.